What's going on YouTube? It's TH back again with another video, giving you an updated 2-round NFL mock draft post-Senior Bowl edition, and hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you do, hit that like button. It would help me and my channel out a ton. If you're new to the channel, want to see more football, draft, off-season content, everything of the sort, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. And of course, this is just a catalyst for a conversation. Love to talk to you about this mock draft, about the NFL draft in general, down in the comments section. If you're watching this video, if you have a favorite team, be sure to tell me what you think this draft means for your franchise. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Do you want to see them go in a different direction? Love to have your thoughts down in the comments section. We're back on the Draft Network. Let's jump right into it. I'm going to start with Evan Neal as the #1 overall pick. This could certainly be edge, and you'll hear me make this argument a little bit later on. If they did go edge here, it would give you a pretty nice pass rushing tandem with Josh Allen and, Kayvon Thibodeau, Aiden Hutchinson, whoever it is. Gives you a nice strength there to build off of on the defensive side, but more likely than not, if you were to ask me right now, I would say Cam Robinson's probably leaving. Therefore, big hole at left tackle. And if you have the #1 overall pick again, you might as well use that resource to protect your #1 overall pick from last year's draft. Then we get to the Detroit Lions, and just for the sake of doing something a little bit different, I've primarily been going Hutchinson and Thibodeau this time around. Let's just say the Lions buy into saying, hey, we're still probably a year or two away from really being in a position to compete. Let's go with Thibodeau. Might have a little bit higher of an upside, but he's not quite as refined a product as Hutchinson, who will then take off the board at 3 to Houston. Both teams could use some long-term edge players who can be a part of their championship window in a handful of years. And they're both pretty interchangeable in my eyes. I think Thibodeau is a little bit more of a project than Hutchinson. Hutchinson, therefore, probably in a better spot to be able to come in and contribute right away. So take your pick there, and just for the sake of not doing the same thing over and over and over again, I decided to flip it this time around. But they are pretty interchangeable in my eyes. Then we get to the New York Jets, and I've decided to change it up a little bit. Been going Derek Stingley a lot in this spot. Instead, I'm going to go Kyle Hamilton, and this could be offensive tackle, but I think George Fant, I know, is a player they liked, and he played pretty well for him. Morgan Moses could obviously be someone who's coming back to play that right tackle spot. If they bring back one of those two guys, I think you're fine. And then you find some other veterans to patch up, center, right guard. And then if you bring one of those two guys back to play right tackle, I think you're in an okay spot. I would assume Mekhi Becton's going to be able to get back in shape. Obviously, the weight concerns are a bit of an issue. You just drafted Elijah Vera Tucker after moving up earlier in the first round of last year's draft to be able to get your guy and play him at left guard. So I think this is a spot where you prioritize defense. Then later on, we'll turn back to the offense later on in this draft and get some pass catchers for Zach Wilson. That's just the way I see it. Then we get to the first of 2 top 7 picks for the New York Giants. And for this occasion, I thought about switching it up, going cross over at Kim Ekwonu, just again for the sake of not being too repetitive. But Ekwonu has played right tackle at NC State. And I feel like if you're the Giants and you draft Charles Cross, you're probably moving Andrew Thomas over to right tackle after 2 years of getting better and better week in and week out, generally speaking. You would hate to see him have to make that flip. Cross has pretty much only played left tackle, and he's played a ton of it at Mississippi State. So I think it might be easier to go Ekwonu, have him play right tackle, which he's already done in the past. You keep Thomas, and his continued development stays at left tackle, as opposed to going cross and flipping Thomas or Cross. And I think that's a little bit less of an ideal situation. And therefore, Charles Cross is going to be the pick for me, the Carolina Panthers. This could obviously be a quarterback, but I think this is a team that's going to probably try to go for a veteran option. And if that's the case, then keeping them upright if you have this pick. If you don't have this pick, then it doesn't matter. But if you do have this pick and you somehow landed Deshaun Watson despite not giving up this #6 overall pick, something like that, I think Cross makes a ton of sense there as a blindside protector. Then we get back to the Giants at pick #7. And you could go a few different places here. Jermaine Johnson was a big one in the Senior Bowl. I don't know about him as a top 7 player. You could go George Karlaftis, and I'm kind of intrigued by that fit. Karlaftis is more of a power rusher, but he does have some good bend and agility behind his taller stature and a strong build. But pairing that, muscle mover and power rusher with Azeez Ojulari, more of a finesse type. But instead, I'm going to go with David Ojabo. I think he presents just a little bit more of an upside, given his athletic measurables, what he'll test at, and the fact that he's still learning the game of football. So go with the upside play if you're picking, once again, in the top 7. Get you an edge rusher to pair with Azeez Ojulari. Additionally, it may not be a power rusher to a finesse guy, but those two guys are athletic freaks, so what does it matter? And then we get to the Atlanta Falcons, and I feel bad in my Falcons offseason preview video. If you didn't see that, definitely go back and check that out. Starting up that series, excited about it. But I said 8 makes a lot of sense to be your Calvin Ridley replacement spot. And right now, Ridley is still on the roster, and there's a lot of trade rumors, but I think, maybe if it's a team like New England in the 20s or somewhere thereabout, maybe even an in-division trade, probably unlikely, but, the Saints at 18, somewhere in that vicinity, if you get a first-round pick for Calvin Ridley, maybe that's the place you go wide receiver, and maybe you can ultimately talk Ridley into staying in Atlanta. That said, I've decided to go Derek Stingley Jr. here. And this obviously could be an edge spot as well. Like, this could be Karlaftis or Ajabo, whichever one's not taken at 7 in this case. But my way of thinking about Stingley here was similar to how I viewed the Bengals situation last year at 5. I was lobbying for Jamar Chase over Penei Sewell, both great players. But taking Chase, moving Higgins to your 2, Boyd as your number 3 and your slot guy, gave you an elite level wide receiver room and one that not many teams can keep up with or say they have anything close to that, as opposed to going offensive line and okay, you have 1 or 2 solid offensive line pieces and a couple good wide receivers. You're just solid across the board. I saw this as an opportunity for a defensive coordinator in Dean Pease to emulate what Brian Flores had in Miami, obviously not there anymore, or Wink Martindale, again, not in Baltimore anymore, but what he had. Those 2 guys blitzed a ton, and they had 2 lockdown corners when healthy on the outside. Byron Jones, Xavier Howard in Miami, and ideal world, Marcus Peters and Marlon Humphrey in Baltimore. And I thought, Atlanta, you could take an edge rusher and, them and Grady Jarrett present a nice 1-2 combo. But you could also take corner, and especially in this situation for Derek Stingley, where a lot of people are mixed on him. I still think he's CB1 in this class, and we've seen him play at an elite level back in 2019. Didn't have a whole lot to play for after that because LSU just wasn't all that good. Not to say he shouldn't have been going 100%, and not to make an excuse for why the tape wasn't as good, but that to say, in Atlanta, he'd be stepping into the cornerback 2 role, given how good A.J. Terrell is. And for Dean Pease, having 2 potential lockdown corners makes it easier for you to scheme up pressure and bring those exotic blitzes that Dean Pease is known to bring to the house. So that's my rationale of thinking there. So I'm going to go corner at 8. This could still be wide receiver and obviously could still be edge. A lot of places that the Falcons could go there at 8, but I kind of like the idea of going Stingley, pair him up with Terrell, and allow Dean Pease to then get creative with the blitz packages that he brings. And then we get to the Denver Broncos at number 9. I'm going to stick with Devin Lloyd here. Again, this is not a pick I anticipate the Broncos having. I do think they are the front runners for Aaron Rodgers if Rodgers leaves Green Bay. So I don't necessarily think they have this pick, but it is interesting to think about. They bring in Clint Kubiak's, Clint Kubiak, former offensive coordinator in Minnesota. Now he's the quarterback's coach. Maybe if, Rodgers doesn't become available and he's not on the move leaving Green Bay, maybe it is Kirk Cousins, or push comes to shove, Jimmy Garoppolo might be the guy there. And in those situations, you probably do have this number 9 overall pick. And you could go, I guess, corner again back-to-back years after you just took Patrick Surtain in that exact same location. But if they do have this pick, I think Devin Lloyd makes a ton of sense. This could also be another edge spot, especially George Karlaftis. I wonder if this team might have what it takes to switch to a 4-3. That's what Bradley Chubb primarily was used at at NC State. You draft Karlaftis, I think he is a great 4-3 plug-and-play starter D-end. And those 2 players, you figure out the interior. I think they might have what it takes to shift into a 4-3. But for right now, give them Devin Lloyd. If they do have this pick, I think he would be a huge upgrade over Josie Jewell, A.J. Johnson, both free agents. But even if those 2 came back, I think Lloyd would be an upgrade. Then we get to the New York Jets once again. And this is where we are going to have our first wide receiver come off the board. It's Drake London. Just a different body type than what the Jets have right now. Obviously a lot bigger than the likes of, Elijah Moore, Jamison Crowder if he does come back, and even Corey Davis. And I think this puts you in a spot where I know they like Elijah Moore on the outside, but I really think he could be an unbelievable slot receiver for this team. You play London and Davis on the outside. You have Corey Davis who can work the middle of the field. He can be a yards after the catch guy. He can also push the ball down the field. Does a lot of everything, not really a master of any of that. And then London could be your possession catch guy. He even has inside-out versatility. And again, big catch radius, just something you don't have on this roster to make the life for Zach Wilson a little bit easier. I think that really completes, at least on paper, a solid wide receiver room for the Jets. Obviously, you need these players to take step forwards. You need London to hit, but at least on paper, it looks really, really intriguing. Then we get to the Washington football team, and now we'll talk some Senior Bowl. Matt Corral, a lot of people call him the winner of the Senior Bowl despite not being there, just because he didn't get, muddied into the group of, Malik Willis had 1 or 2 good days, looked like he bounced back after a rough week 1. Kenny Pickett, the hand size thing, we'll talk about that later on. Howell wasn't overly impressive. Ritter still has some accuracy issues. So by not going, Corral feels like he might have separated himself just by not having bad traits shined upon him. So Matt Corral, I think, makes some sense. Ron Rivera has some experience working with dual threat quarterbacks. Corral does have the legs. The only thing that really holds him back is he is a little bit smaller, 6'1", but we're also living in a world where, remember how big of a deal it was? Kyler Murray was like sub 5'11" or whatever, sub 5'10", whatever the case was a couple of years ago. Quarterbacks are coming in a lot of different shapes and sizes nowadays. I'm not really worried about, Corral being 6'1". He got better year over year in college. He has a good arm, has good mobility, has some good accuracy. And even the games that, Ole Miss didn't look great in, take the Alabama game for an example, I don't think Corral was really the problem. And he actually played pretty decently given everything that was going on around him. So I like Corral there at 11 as the first quarterback off the board. And then we get to the Minnesota Vikings. And I think this is a really solid spot for Sauce Gardner to find himself in as a landing destination. Obviously, this is a team that needs cornerback big time. Patrick Peterson's a free agent. Brashad Breeland didn't work out, right? They have Cam Dantzler, but doesn't look like the organization, at least with Rich Spielman and Mike Zimmer, they weren't entirely sold on him. We'll see what, presumably Kevin O'Connell and that staff wants to do at that position. But I think if it's not Gardner, this could obviously go in a lot of different directions. If Devin Lloyd's on the board, he could be in play, him or Nakobe Dean. This could obviously be edge. I think George Karlaftis would be a fantastic fit. David Ojabo would be a worthy project in the first round for Minnesota. It could also be offensive line. A lot of places they could go here. This could be quarterback of the future for all we know. So a lot of different routes this could go, or this could be for Minnesota. But I like Sauce Gardner. I think he's one of the best players available on the board at this point, maybe the best player on the board at this point. So it gives you good value if you are Minnesota fans as well. Then we get to the Cleveland Browns. Nothing new here. Garrett Wilson. This team needs a number one separator. They probably need to restructure the deal for Jarvis Landry, try to create some more cap room, but I think a player like Wilson who can get it down deep down the field, over the middle of the field, be a yak guy, just be a number one guy makes the life of Jarvis Landry that much easier. Landry has proven, whenever given the chance, he can be a volume number one, but he best operates and the team is at its best when he is your number two complimentary slot wide receiver. Think about the Raiders, right? Like Renfro can put up numbers, but it's best for the ecosystem if he's the number two and you have a legit number one. Or, even better example, Cole Beasley in Buffalo. Like, he puts up gaudy numbers, but if Diggs wasn't there, you would be concerned about Beasley being the number one for the Bills. So, thinking that line, I think this is a great pick here for Cleveland. And then we'll address, the defensive line once we get to the second round of this mock. Then to the Baltimore Ravens. This is one I've bounced around on a lot. This could definitely be Tyler Linderbaum. I'm deciding to go Kenyon Green. I think I'm a little higher on Green than most. I think, one, his versatility is just such an awesome skill set to have. And I think if, you're the Ravens, you brought back Patrick McCarry, you have some options now at right tackle. Push comes to shove, Kenyon Green's your starting left guard. So you have some nice versatility and some options there with Green. Additionally, I think once he gets to the NFL level and one, gets NFL coaching, and two, is told, hey, you're not going to play four different offensive line spots. We're going to hone in on you being a left guard or you being a right tackle. That will make him that much better of a football player, just honing in and focusing on that skill and what it takes to be good at that specific position. So Green brings a lot of versatility to the table. I think there's some untapped potential in there as well if he can get to a spot and they say, focus on working on being our starting right tackle, our starting left guard. I think that would be what's in store if he went to Baltimore. Now we get to a couple of picks for the Philadelphia Eagles. They could go offensive line, and I think we'll come back to the interior offensive line, but I think this is some great value for George Karlaftis. I think he could be a plug-and-play starter at defensive end. Makes a lot of sense for that schema. This is also a franchise that has a trend and a history of picking these pass rushers in the first round. It's paid dividends, right? It's been one of the biggest strengths that the Eagles have had for nearly a decade now. So you get Karlaftis next in line to take over potentially for Brandon Graham and company once they get a little bit older or their play takes a decline and you have to move on from them anyways. Then another pick for the Eagles. I like this spot for Treylon Burks. Now you can play inside and out. But in an ideal world, he's probably playing on the outside with Devonta Smith, and then you move Jalen Reagor into that field-stretching slot role that I think is probably the best place to get something for the value that you spent a first-round pick on in Jalen Reagor. So really like how that wide receiver room pans out. You have a big-body guy like Treylon Burks. He can win in contested catch situations. Also a freak athletically. He can help you push the ball down the field and get you some big boom plays that, that passing attack didn't really have a whole lot of last year. Devonta Smith moves into this role where he can be, jack of all trades, work the middle of the field, be a yak guy, be your third down, need a first down type of dude, get open, separator, and then, like I said, with Reagor, field stretching slot. I think that's the best role for him. And then for the LA Chargers, I've contemplated what I should do in this spot, and I think I have settled on what I want to do as I review my notes one final time. I'm going to go Nakobe Dean here. Now, I know a lot of Chargers fans are saying, Jordan Davis, give me that big run-stopping D tackle. We'll get to it. That's all I'll say. This obviously could also be a wide receiver spot, but I think I'm going to address that as well once we get to the second round with the Chargers. But I like Dean. This team needs an inside linebacker. Kenneth Murray has not been it, especially in any other realm other than pass rushing. I think this makes a whole lot of sense for the Chargers. Then we get the New Orleans Saints, and this is where I'm going to have Kenny Pickett come off the board. And I'm going to make a case for why the Saints might be dangerous if this draft plays out in real life for New Orleans. Kenny Pickett, the biggest concern coming out of the Senior Bowl was the hands, right? And Joe Burrow has small hands, 9-inch, I think, exactly, hands. Well, Kenny Pickett's at 8 1/4, right? And like I said earlier with Matt Corral, quarterbacks are coming in all different shapes and sizes, but every time there's a label being pushed and we're changing what we see as NFL standards in a certain category, and especially for athletic measurables, it'll take some time before people buy into that, especially when it's as big of a difference from 9 to an 8 1/4. Now, where that comes into concern, of course, Kenny Pickett wears gloves, right? What does he look like in the snow and the rain, lots of wind, et cetera, plus the Senior Bowl? It felt like a lot of the takeaways and what I heard, Kenny Pickett noticeably the weakest arm of the big name first-round caliber guys there. How do you alleviate some of those concerns about, what does that, weaker arm look like in not ideal situations? Or what happens with the small hands? Put him in a dome for half the year. That feels like a nice way to try to combat that. And it's also an offense. I know Sean Payton's leaving, but it's tradition, it's bread and butter, has been working the middle of the field. That's certainly where Michael Thomas is extra special if he is still on the roster. And we will come back to that wide receiver room once we get to the second round. I think Kenny Pickett, one of the best places he can find himself is in New Orleans, right? It's a place where you're playing in a dome, so you're not having to worry as much about the small hands. Now, obviously, they're going to play road games, and weather will be an issue then, but for the most part, this is one of the spots that minimizes the small hand risk, but also the weaker arm concerns that come around Kenny Pickett. So I like that fit a lot. Plus, he's the oldest guy in the class, so New Orleans could see it as, hey, this guy might be the best day one quarterback. We still have our guys. That's what it looks like. The offseason is going to be really for New Orleans. Keep your guys around, restructure contracts, and that's about all you can do. So you keep your stars around. You draft Pickett. Once we get to the second round and we add that wide receiver, I think this team could be really dangerous and still make a push inside the NFC South, especially with Tom Brady obviously retiring. Back to the Philadelphia Eagles at pick number 19. Now, like I promised, going to go back to the interior offensive line. I think Tyler Linderbaum makes some sense here. I'm not crazy about the idea of going there as opposed to corner, but I considered Kyler Elam here. You could go Andrew Booth as well. You could also go linebacker, right? Especially if Devin Lloyd isn't taken at 9. He could be somebody who's, the price is right here. But with Linderbaum, potential Jason Kelce replacement, we'll see once we have an official notice on Kelce. Is he retiring? Is he coming back? That might switch, what I do with this pick. But if Kelce steps aside, Linderbaum's your plug-and-play new starter, and you play Landon Dickerson at guard. That is a really nice run-blocking tandem, especially considering that is, the offensive identity for this team. Power run football. Use Hurts as a runner as well, and set up play action by having teams forced to commit to stop the run. I think that all makes sense for why you would go Linderbaum here at 19. Then we get to the Pittsburgh Steelers at 20. It was no secret. Mike Tomlin let the world know that he is interested in Malik Willis. Was eyeing the man all practice is what I've heard. So this might be the lowest that Willis goes, right? And for Pittsburgh to get him, it might take moving up. And also, this is one of those things where it kind of adds up with what we've been hearing. Sounds like the plan right now for Pittsburgh is to go with either Dwayne Haskins, Mason Rudolph, or first-round quarterback. If it's Willis, probably not ready to play right away, and probably not ready for a year if we're being honest with ourselves. So it might be a year if you're a Steelers fan. Sorry, you're going to have to watch some Mason Rudolph. You might have to watch some Dwayne Haskins. It's not going to be pretty. This might be the first losing season for Coach Mike Tomlin, unless Willis is able to step in and exceed a lot of expectations in year one. I wouldn't bank on that, but Pittsburgh has made it clear and shown the world that they are interested in Willis, and because of that, this might be as low as he falls. Again, it feels like Corral really won the Senior Bowl by not being there, but the true winner of people who attended was Willis, because you saw the adjustments from day one where it was a little rough, the weather wasn't great. Day two, he made some steps in the right direction, and you could still see the arm and how much life it has to it, plus the athletic abilities obviously on display anytime he touches the gridiron. So those athletic things that he can do that nobody else really can, and few people on the planet really could, all stand out in a setting like that at the Senior Bowl. So Willis, of the people who were there, probably the winner of the quarterbacks, and because of that, 20, he might not even be on the board at this spot. Then we get to the New England Patriots at pick number 21. Thought about a few different directions we could go here. Ultimately, I decided to go with Trent McDuffie. This could be wide receiver, without a doubt. This could also be, Andrew Booth Jr., a lot of different places they could go. I like McDuffie for the respect that I assume this team does bring back J.C. Jackson. That said, Jalen Mills is not necessarily your perfect cornerback too. This is a defense that has long relied on its cornerbacks, but also, what if J.C. Jackson doesn't come back and then Jalen Mills is your one? That is a huge wee-woo. Additionally, Bill Belichick, this is one of those spots where I am stepping away from me making the picks as opposed to thinking about what does Bill Belichick normally do here. He has not been someone who's had a ton of success drafting first-round wide receivers. That's no reason to stop, but I could also see Belichick, Kraft, and that front office saying, well, let's do what we normally do. Let's wait till the second round. Or let's be players for Allen Robinson in free agency or Chris Godwin or someone like that. And maybe because you haven't had a good track record of drafting wide receivers, you go out there and spend money on somebody like that. Additionally, the system might still be changing. Maybe this is the year they adopt the use of the 2 tight ends that they paid out big money to last offseason. We'll see. Nonetheless, as much as wide receivers a need, corner is just a big a need for me. Also, if Devin Lloyd is not taken at 9 and Lloyd or Dean are available here at 21, they make a ton of sense as well. So a lot of different directions the Patriots could go for sure. I am going to go wide receiver here for the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm going to go Jameson Williams, and I'm not just trying to replace one Alabama speedster with another, but Williams really can do a whole lot. And we started to see the Raiders do it a little bit with Ruggs, but Williams can win in a lot of different areas. He could be a fantastic yard after catch option, get him the ball in screen situations. He'd be great there. I think once John Mechie got down, you started to see him open up his skill set as an intermediate over the middle of the field. 3rd down and 5, got to have the first down type of guy. But of course, the thing to talk about with Jameson Williams is the big playability. This guy is going to stretch the field, and we saw this Raiders offense significantly better when they had a Henry Ruggs, or even when you had games where Deshaun Jackson was really stellar and you saw him play a whole lot. The offense opened up because defenses had to respect that over-the-top speed. So Williams instantly gives you that, but I think he's also just a guy they can use throughout the offense, underneath, intermediate part of the field, and deep down the field. So I think this is a slam dunk pick here for the Raiders. But this is another team where, right tackle's a concern. You could go corner. You could go linebacker. Maybe you want to go IDL. A lot of places the Raiders could go as well. And then for the Arizona Cardinals, this is where I'm going to go Andrew Booth Jr. This could obviously change as well. If you let Chandler Jones walk and instead you use that resources and that money to invest in the secondary, you bring in a couple of cheaper contracts, bring in some veterans and some proven contracts, maybe then the attention turns to edge and you could easily flip this. But we'll talk about edge more once we get to the second round. But Andrew Booth at 23, that is stellar value for a team that needs some younger starting caliber corners. This is a slam dunk situation for Arizona. And then we get to the Cowboys, and this is one, I think this might have been the pick that caused the biggest domino sequence to fall and change. When I first did this, I had it playing out differently. I've decided to edit and revise it. I'm going to go Jordan Davis here. It feels like, you bring the big guy, the big D. It feels like a Jerry Jones type of move. Additionally, what this guy could do as a run stopper, eating up blocks, makes the life for Micah Parsons that much easier. DeMarcus Lawrence as well. Randy Greger, if he's back, their lives get a little bit easier with Davis being the run stopper up the middle, and even the young GTs they drafted last year's draft. But you could also add to the cornerback room. You could have a Leighton Vander Esch replacement. I thought about Linderbaum if he was available in the spot. Maybe it's Zion Johnson in the spot because this team values their offensive line and you're looking for a potential left guard replacement. You're looking for a new center. Again, to me, it was either Linderbaum or Davis. I decided to go Linderbaum at 19, which made this decision a little bit easier to go Davis at 24. And I'm not going to stop there. I'm going to go back-to-back Georgia IDL players. Now, do I think this actually happens in the NFL draft? Well, probably not. We'll see. That'd be a really crazy coincidence, back-to-back Bulldog IDL players. But I look at Buffalo, they could also go corner for sure. Like, they need a number 2 guy who's better than Levi Wallace to play opposite of Tre'Davious White. Don't hate that whatsoever. Could also go Iowa. This could be Zion Johnson, right? Looking for a John Feliciano replacement. It could be Linderbaum if he's available, right? I decided to go Devonta Wyatt because maybe he could be what Ed Oliver wasn't. Additionally, he is a better run stopper than someone like Ed Oliver. So inherently, right off the bat, you're getting a guy who's going to help you stop the run, make Tremaine Edmonds' workload that much more manageable, help out Matt Milano up the middle of the field, eating up blocks and allowing them more to focus on what they can be and pass coverage. I think that's a win for Sean McDermott in that defense. And additionally, like I said, Ed Oliver's been a bit of a disappointment. And maybe Devonta Wyatt, on top of his run-stopping ability, gives you that much more in the pass rush department, especially from the interior, that Ed Oliver has left some to be desired at. So I think Wyatt makes a lot of sense. Also, Jordan Davis is available here. I'd love to see Davis be the run-stopping nose tackle playing next to Ed Oliver. Let him focus on being a pass rusher and see if you can get that much more out of Ed Oliver, who you've obviously been a first-round pick on in years prior. So that would be an interesting fit as well, but because Davis off the board, I went with Devonta Wyatt. And then for the Tennessee Titans, I love the fit of Chris Olave in Tennessee. A guy who, like we talked about with Williams, I mean, yeah, you could use him as a yak guy. Underneath, he's just a polished route runner. He can win in the middle of the field, intermediate areas, but I think this guy is a downfield burner, smooth route runner as a big play element, and then you let A.J. Brown be the guy who eats up over the middle of the field, and he's your chain mover in third down spots. I think that's a nice 1-2 tandem, and who knows, maybe by adding Olave to the mix, you can limit the amount that you're leaning on Julio Jones, and he really becomes just this extra special, flavor into your cooking, and you use him in certain spots, limiting his snaps when you need a big play. Julio Jones is out there, or when you're looking to bomb it deep off of play action, that's when Julio checks in. Be interested to see how that, what that relationship looks like if this were the pick. But minimum, even if you're not thinking about it from that perspective, Julio Jones is not the same guy as he once was. He might have a game or two left in a season where he turns back the clock, but he's just not going to be the same guy who once was, maybe the best wide receiver in football. Need to replenish that. Olave, I think day one might be the best wide receiver on a roster. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be the best, but I think he could step in and play tomorrow if need be at the NFL level. So he was a first rounder for me last year. Decided to go back to Ohio State. See no reason why he shouldn't go in the first round this season. For the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I haven't gotten a chance to talk about it on this channel yet, but Tom Brady's retired. Carson Strong makes a ton of sense. I don't know if he's the guy you want to take over as Sam Howell. I could see Howell totally being someone that Bruce Arians and company like. I could see Desmond Ridder being in play here. But the reason I decided to go Strong was look at Bruce Arians' track record. If he keeps this job and decides to stick around in Tampa for a little bit longer, when he was in Pittsburgh, offensive coordinator for Ben Roethlisberger, right? Then he gets to Indianapolis, and Andrew Luck can move around, sure, but pocket passer, tall, big arm type of dude. Arizona, it starts with Carson Palmer. Same ilk, right? And then Tom Brady, obviously, in Tampa Bay, and that's even on the heels of Jameis Winston when Arians first got there, who is not all that fleet of foot, big arm, trying to push the ball down the field. And Arians is this vertical passing game. That's his MO. Strong is a perfect fit for that. And, he just feels like the quarterback that Arians is a little partial to. So I don't know. I'm not having Strong ranked ahead of Howell. I might have him ahead of Ridder, but it's pretty close. Different skill sets. But this is just more so an interesting fit. I think they might go corner here. Probably going to have to franchise tag Carlton Davis, and you're getting to a spot then where next offseason you have Davis, Sean Murphy-Bunting, and Jamel Dean all as corners. In an ideal world, maybe this is a Roger McCreary spot. I think he's an interesting name to keep your eye on here, especially with the shorter arms. Maybe McCreary is destined to move in the slot. So then next offseason, you're letting Sean Murphy-Bunting walk, re-sign Davis, re-sign Dean. McCreary steps in as your starting slot corner, and he fits the defense really well too. So all that certainly in play here, but I want to take the opportunity to talk about Brady and potential fit there with Carson Strong in Tampa. Tell me what you think down below in the comment section if you are a Bucs fan. Then for the Green Bay Packers, I've been having this pick a lot. Could be Trevor Penning for sure, but I'm going to go Bernard Raymond. Didn't have the greatest, Senior Bowl week. Got exposed a little bit. It's also tough. He is 25, so this former tight end moving to tackle where he's still learning the position. He has that upside. He's also a little older, which makes it a little bit of a concern, right? Like once he fully, hits his peak when it comes to, technician and as polished as he's going to get, he'll be, 28-ish potentially. And, if you wait that long and then he finally hits his peak, that window's a little bit slimmer than it would be if he was 22 and he hit that, peak polished technician side of it at 25. All that to say, this team obviously could use a right tackle in the future, and I think minimum, Raymond can certainly be that for Green Bay. This could also be a wide receiver spot as well. We'll see what happens with Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers, but this team has a track record of just ignoring wide receiver in the first round and instead opting to focus on it in the second and the third, which, that's their MO. That's their MO. For the Miami Dolphins, this is where I'm going to go Trevor Penning. They just hired Mike McDaniels as the head coach, former offensive coordinator in San Francisco. And like Kyle Shanahan has with Trent Williams, that mean mauler of a run blocker, Trevor Penning could be that for Mike McDaniels. Not calling Penning the next, Trent Williams, not by any stretch of the imagination, but at the Senior Bowl, you saw Penning with that mean streak. Dude plays with a chip on his shoulder, to put it lightly, and at least he'll bring some, road grading ability and a mean tone with it to Miami, a team that needs to get better in the trenches. I think Penning could be a guy they invest in as a potential starting left tackle of the future and bring some identity. Plus, it feels like a team that has a lot of tackle to guard converts. So if they get a tackle, figure out the right side as well, all those players give you a lot of options to piece together left guard, right guard. So we'll see, but I think you got to keep investing resources on that offensive line. You haven't hit yet. Eventually, the odds are you'll probably find one that's at least okay, right? So that's the biggest area of concern to me when I look at the Dolphins. So continue to put resources into that area. For the Kansas City Chiefs, I think this is a great spot for Jermaine Johnson. Johnson might ultimately be better as a 3-4 outside linebacker, stand-up rusher, but I think he'd be fine in a 4-3. And plus, Spags gives you a lot of different looks. He could be somebody who is standing up and rushing over the middle of the offensive line, or he could be a stand-up outside edge rusher. Spags mixes it up, but this is a team that needs edge rush big time. Frank Clark's a huge disappointment. Melvin Ingram obviously was on a one-year deal, first with Pittsburgh, then with KC. They're looking for edge rush big time, and we'll address wide receiver once we get to the second round. Big area of need. Could also be a corner here, so depends on what they want to do here. But they have made the most of players like Rashad Fenton and L'Jarius Sneed, so I could see Kyrie Elam being in play here, maybe a Roger McCreary, maybe someone else who's fallen, but I decided to go edge here at 30. And then for the Cincinnati Bengals, playing in the Super Bowl, I'm going to go Zion Johnson. This feels like a perfect spot for him to go. Could play right tackle, but I think this is a guy you're starting on the interior, and spoiler alert, we're going to go back to IOL once we get back to the Bengals in the second round. They could use two guards, right? It's pretty rough, and might need a center too. So you might be remaking the entire left or right guard spot of that offensive line. And lastly, for the Detroit Lions, I'm going to go Sam Howell here. I think he's a guy who should go in the first round. I expected a little bit more at a Senior Bowl, but just like Willis, where you see the tools and that stands out, I think the same was true for Howell from what I got to see. The situation around him wasn't ideal, right? Not great weather, and where Ritter has Alec Pierce there and Carson Strong has Romeo Doubs there, even though both of them, neither one of those wide receivers really stood out. There is some camaraderie and some chemistry there. Howell is playing with nobody. Additionally, I've said this before, I like Sam Howell and the idea that I've seen him do it with great NFL caliber, talent around him at UNC, and then this year I got to see him try to carry an offense all by his lonesome. So it's kind of nice to be able to see him do it in both spots. This is also an area where you don't have to rush Howell onto the field. He is coming from a very college-like offense. Lots of goes, lots of posts. That was UNC's, that's especially 2 years ago when they had, De'Ami Brown and Daz Newsome and company. That was how they put up 40, 50 points a game. So it might take some time for Howell to learn what a pro-style offense looks like. No need to rush him out there. You're already paying Jared Goff. So you can have Howell sit, learn the offense, learn the speed of the game as well. Then we get to the second round and let the fun begin. Part of the reason I was happy with how this mock draft turned out was, Travon Walker certainly can be a first-round guy. He has the body, he has the flexibility to be, 3-4 DN, 3-4 outside linebacker, 4-3 end, 4-3 interior guy. Because of how big his body is, and he still needs to get better as a pass rush, so he isn't necessarily put himself in an area where, okay, he can only win in this type of way, therefore he should be in this system. It's a pretty open path in which you could take with Travon Walker. Here I haven't fallen to the top of the second round, so for the Jags to get Evan Neal and then Travon Walker, first round caliber type of edge, he's not the same guy as Hutchinson or Thibodeau, but you still got an edge at the top of round one and a guy who I think you're getting some great value on here at 33. This class is getting harder and harder to fit this guy's a first rounder in the actual first round. We're starting to get to that point in the NFL draft process. Then for the Detroit Lions, I once again shuffled my notes around. This is going to be a bit of a project pick here, but I really like the idea of George Pickens coming off the board here and go to a team that just doesn't need him to be carried him to the Super Bowl in year one, right? This is a chance for Pickens to continue to get, more and more acclimated with playing after the injury that he had at Georgia. It's also back-to-back Bulldog off the board. That's probably not going to happen, but we'll see. Twice in this draft have done that now, but I like Pickens as an upside play here for the Lions. And had he not suffered the injury, even just in the college football playoff, you saw what people liked about Pickens. Great size, great downfield, big playability. He can win at the catch point. He's also just fast as all get out. He can blow by people. He has good route running ability, and he can get open all by himself. So a lot of things to like about George Pickens' game. 34 might be a little high, but I think the upside's there because if things work out, then you have this awesome outside big body dude. Amon-Ra St. Brown has inside out flexibility, probably long-term slot there for Detroit. Next thing you know, you see the offense kind of coming together. Additionally, you just took Sam Howell at 32. I like the idea of pairing that quarterback wide receiver, project, your long-term, what you're banking your future on. I like those two guys being 2 picks separated apart. Makes for a fun draft story as well. Then for the New York Jets, I think this might have been one of the biggest winners of the Senior Bowl. Brian Asamoah, this guy, freak of nature athletically, and he's going to test well when it comes to the 40, the 3-cone, all those measurables as well, but has good size, has good tape at Oklahoma, massive arms. And I think that was one of the things that immediately, once people started talking about it, his name started to catch fire when it comes to this buzz. Up 95 plus percentile. I'll have to go check mock draftables and see where it actually checks in with his arm length. But this dude has been able to, tip passes that other linebackers normally wouldn't. He's been able to get his hands on ball carriers coming through the middle of the field that other linebackers just can't. So there is some extra value there. And additionally, looking at this Jets defense, this is a team that needs this type of player in this type of position. Think Fred Warner. I'm not saying Asamoah is going to be Warner, but think that type of defense and that fit here for Brian Asamoah. I think he'd be a really, really nice addition for this offense. Then we get back to the New York Giants. I'm going back to the offensive line. Darian Kinnard, I think the hand placement, especially in pass protection, still was a concern coming out of the Senior Bowl, but you also see what he could be as a run blocker minimum, right? And I think in this spot, you already took Ikem Ekwonu. You're playing him at right tackle. Darian Kinnard's probably your left guard of the future. Run greater minimum. You're at least getting that type of production. Additionally, I think you can work with him as a pass protector, make Daniel Jones happy there. But this is just pick after you take Ikem Ekwonu at 5. Saquon Barkley has got to be smiling from ear to ear, you're trying to maximize that value on what you have already spent as a number 2 overall pick. I think going Ikem Ekwonu and then Kinnard at the top of round 2 is where this team can really separate themselves and take a bad offensive line unit into a pretty decent one pretty quickly. Then for the Houston Texans at 37, I like Roger McCreary here. He is this man press corner. They just hired Lovie Smith as their next head coach. That's a interesting move, we'll call it, in and of itself, but McCreary has this ability. He's shown he can play press man. You probably play a lot of press cover too for Lovie Smith, but still long term, I think he has some of that ability. He'll test pretty well. He's a good athlete overall outside of the 29-inch arms. That's the main concern for McCreary. Otherwise, he's probably in the first round more than likely. So like the value here for Houston. And hey, maybe the arms are a little short and you can't play on the outside. Well, you figured out your slot corner of the future. The team has so many holes. Plug away one at a time. Back to the Jets. This time we're going back to the offensive side. I love Trey McBride. He was the winner of the tight end group out of the Senior Bowl. None that really stood out, and they're all pretty much just red zone only options. Think about what the Steelers did with Pat Freiermuth and his production. That's basically what this tight end room is going to look a lot like. But I think here for the Jets, McBride may be on the fringe of being a top 50 player thereabout. 38's a little bit of a reach, but it's one of those things where if you can get London and McBride in the same draft, that you also got your future inside linebacker and a nice player off at the board at 4 with Kyle Hamilton, adding some trendsetters and some playmakers overall on the defensive side, plus London and McBride to help make Zach Wilson's life easier and get more production out of him. Just give him big body guys too. That's the other thing I was really trying to focus on is London, huge hands, big catch radius. McBride in the red zone, guys automatic. So trying to get the most out of Zach Wilson after you just took him number 2 overall last year. But you also got 2, I think really nice, chips that you could build your defense with Hamilton at 4 and Asamoah at the top of the second round. So all in all, I'm really pleased with how I put together this draft for the Jets. If you're a Jets fan, I'd love to have your thoughts down below. Then for the Bears, let's go David Bell here. I think this makes sense. Similar body type as Allen Robinson. Feels like a nice plug-and-play replacement. Bell, opposite of Darnell Mooney, feels like a nice compliment based off their skill sets. So all for it. Plus, Larry Borum was not too bad last year. You already have Tevin Jenkins, who took in the second round last year. I think the offensive line is going to figure itself out. Let's go ahead and put some weapons around Justin Fields. Back to the Denver Broncos at pick number 40. I'm going to go ahead and go edge here. And again, this is me leaning into the idea that maybe this team can shift to a 4-3. I think Cam Thomas is solid value here. Got hurt at the Senior Bowl, so kind of hurt his value there. He might have moved into the first round lock conversation had he played well, and he put together a decent week of practice. But this is a spot here. Let's say the Broncos do decide to change to a 4-3. You have Thomas opposite Bradley Chubb. Love that pairing. If they do decide to go and stick with a 3-4, Kingsley Enagbare, Drake Jackson, Myjai Sanders could all be in play here for the Broncos. And we're going to actually stick at edge for the Seattle Seahawks. I'm going to go Arnold Ebiketie here. I think he's a great wide 9 rusher. Him and names escaping me, linebacker that really, Darrell Taylor, former Tennessee Volunteer, really put together some good play as the year went on. I think that's a nice pass rushing tandem that they're both young, not super proven, but they also bring good upside. And with the lack of picks that this team has, unless they do make a Russell Wilson trade, these are the type of players that you need to have hit, and you're hoping hit. And I think Ebiketie, plus what you saw from Taylor, gives you a nice pass rush, foundation you can build upon. And ideally, that allows you to move Jamal Adams back into a deep safety, box safety type roles, as opposed to using him as an edge rusher. Washington football team at 42. I'm going to go Lewis Sin here. Of these safeties here, he was the player who played the most as a deep safety. Jackson Hill, primarily a box slot corner guy. Brisker primarily played in the slot. Petrie, same thing as Hill, where he's the slot corner, strong safety type of player. Kirby Joseph could be in play here, but Lewis Sin played really well at Cincinnati, graded out really well, good coverage guy. And I think that was part of the thing that was missing and led to me being disappointed with the Washington Commanders. I should talk about that. Wrong logo here on the Draft Network, not to give them any grief, but Washington Commanders, how about that? Not crazy about the name, but the unis are sick, so that makes up for it all in my book. But Lewis Sin is one of these guys where I think you can plug and play, start him as your deep safety. They'll probably move on from Landon Collins. I think Cameron Curl already is a better box safety player for Washington, and he's younger and obviously cheaper. So you plug and play Lewis Sin, and I think having that guy who can play that deep safety role minimizes the amount of busted coverages that even by the end of the year where William Jackson II was playing better and they were getting more out of their starting cornerbacks, they were still giving up busted coverages and big plays. Having that, eraser as your deep safety, especially in that cover 3 that Del Rio and Rivera run a lot of, helps make that, go away. Alleviates that issue. So I like Lewis Sin a lot, but also he is a downhill guy. If he recognizes run, he'll be in the box in the snap of a finger ready to make a play. So like what he can bring to the table for Washington. Back to the Atlanta Falcons. Let's go quarterback here. Let's go Desmond Ridder. This is a spot where I really like Ridder as a player and his value here. I, again, am a little bit lower on Ridder than most. I see accuracy and issues, especially when you talk about a guy who 4 years college football playoff experience, took a group of 5 team to the college football playoff. It'd be one thing if he was, Sam Howell, the only true junior in this class, and you're talking about accuracy and issues and things you want to clean up. Ridder, that's not his selling point. So for him to still have those issues is a little concerning for me. But this is a spot where you don't have to rush him in. Presumably they're going to hold on to Matt Ryan for this at least one more year. And, Ryan could be the mentor to Ridder, one of the more accurate quarterbacks of the last decade. Helps polish up Ridder's throwing motion and his touch, his accuracy overall. I think that's a really nice fit. Additionally, that puts Atlanta in a position where they can at least have an option long term. And maybe Ridder's the guy. So really like the value there for 43 for Atlanta and Desmond Ridder. For the Cleveland Browns at pick number 44, I'm going to go to Marvin Leal here. I think he gives you nice versatility. You can play him on the inside, be a Malik Jackson replacement, or he could start at edge. He did some of that with Texas A&M, so maybe he's your Jadeveon Clowney replacement. So overall, he gives you some nice options there that I think make a lot of sense for the Cleveland Browns. Now for the Baltimore Ravens, I'm going to go Kyer Elam. This is a guy, like I said earlier, I think should still be in the first-round conversation, though it does look like his stock has cooled off quite a bit, but great size, man press ability, 6'2", 193. That's what I was looking for. Feels like a Baltimore Ravens cornerback, and this is also a spot where maybe you can get the most out of Elam. Like maybe this is one of the best places he can go. Additionally, Marcus Peters last year of his deal, you're going to pay him a decent amount of money. They might not even bring him back coming off the injury. So Elam could be in a spot where you're leaning on a second-round corner to play day one opposite of Marlon Humphrey. And if you are in that situation for Baltimore, Kyrie Elam, I think, is one of the better players you could be leaning on. I think he's a great scheme fit on top of being a great player. And this is a good cornerback class, and I think there's a lot of day one starters in this group. For the Minnesota Vikings at pick number 46, this is where one of the biggest risers of the Senior Bowl, Logan Hall, is going to come off the board. It's tough with Hall because you don't know exactly where you want to play him. But in that 4-3, assuming it stays 4-3, base defense for Minnesota, Hall can be someone where in passing situations, you can get more pass rushers on the field and maybe kick Hall inside. And, he takes over, a Michael Pierce spot, and Pierce becomes a, early down run situation only type of guy. If they even keep Pierce, they could also cut him and save some cap. Or Hall could be your starting edge opposite of, ideally, Danielle Hunter if you're able to get him back. If not, DJ Wonham, I suppose. But I like Hall. A lot of different ways they can use him. Passing downs in specific. I love the idea of Hall maybe starting as a defensive end, regular downs, but then passing situations, 3rd and 10 and longer. You move Hall inside, bring other pass rushers on the field as, DPRs, play him on the edge. I really like that situation for Minnesota. And you're now looking at a draft where went corner, Sauce Gardner in round 1, Logan Hall in round 2. You're really addressing some of those big holes on the defensive side throughout this draft. And that, plus Kevin O'Connell, keep Kirk Cousins around, this team has a chance to be really competitive, and especially if Aaron Rodgers leaves Green Bay. For the Colts at 47, this is a very easy pick here for me. Nicholas Petit-Frere, feels like one of those tackles that could potentially start right away. And obviously, depending on what they do with Eric Fisher, tackle is going to be a need. Now, if they bring back Eric Fisher, I'll probably switch this maybe a corner. Maybe you start looking at quarterback. We'll see who's on the board. But for right now, with the uncertainty around Fisher, I like Nicholas Petit-Frere and the value he brings there. Then back to the Chargers. Now I'm going to continue my point that I had in the first round. So we went with Nakobe Dean as your Kenneth Murray replacement. I think that's a big area of need. Now I'm going to give him Travis Jones. And this is the reason I said don't go Jordan Davis at 17. You can wait around and get a similar type of player, at least what the role is asking him to be. Jordan Davis doesn't do a whole lot outside of stopping the run. That's all Travis Jones does. But the Senior Bowl, you actually saw a little bit more out of Jones that Davis doesn't bring to the table, and that's pass rush ability. I say this all the time about Jordan Davis. I'd really like to see him be able to at least do what Vita Vea does, where 2, 3, 4, 5 times a game, Vita Vea will just put the center on a quarterback's lap. That's about all the move he has. He's got that bowl. That's about it. And that's all I really want to see from Jordan Davis. Travis Jones put that on tape this past week at the Senior Bowl. So because I've seen it versus I haven't seen it from Davis, there is something to give Jones an edge in that category. So I like this pick here for the Chargers. You got a linebacker in round 1, Travis Jones in round 2, and now right tackle is obviously a big need, and that would be the big need I omit here. You do have Brian Bulaga ideally coming back, and he is under contract, but he makes a lot of money. I could see them wanting to go in a cheaper option there and maybe taking advantage of a good tackle class. But I think this puts you in a spot where you went Dean in the first, Travis Jones, okay, the front 7, got a couple of really good impact players to help stop the run. We can continue to run our 2 high looks. Then in the 3rd round, you add a guy like a Sky Moore out of Western Michigan or a Wan'Dale Robinson. These guys who have Khalil, let's just go to the wide receivers and I'll show you some of the options. Like I said, Sky Moore, Wan'Dale Robinson, Khalil Shakir was who I was thinking of out of Boise State. These guys who just have unlimited burst, seemingly. We're actually going to stay here on this wide receiver for the Saints. But those guys who super twitchy, very fast, get them the ball at the line of scrimmage, use them as a yak screen player, but also Sky Moore, Wan'Dale Robinson, make big plays down the field, and they might be better fit for that, pushing the ball deep role versus a Jalen Guyton. And maybe Jalen Guyton is your, Mike Williams replacement, or maybe that's Josh Palmer. But I think in a perfect world for the Chargers, and I'm going off on a tangent here, and I don't mean to, and I apologize, but Dean, Travis Jones, boom. Okay, you feel really good about the front 7. Wide receiver in round 3. You're probably letting Mike Williams walk in. Let's just say it's Sky Moore. Sky Moore is your gadget. Think about Rondale Moore, honestly. Same last name, not necessarily the same player or any familiar connections, but that guy who can win at the line of scrimmage, be your screen guy, but also be your big play, take the top off the defense type of weapon. And then you have Palmer and Keenan Allen as your other wide receiver starting, and maybe even move Keenan Allen full-time into the slot. He's really, really tough to defend in that area. But tangent aside, if you're a Chargers fan, let me know what you think about that roadmap for this team's draft. Speaking of wide receiver, though, we are going to stay here. Jahan Dotson would be a stellar pick here for the New Orleans Saints. I don't know if he lasts this long. That's the only contingency here. Is if you were to have Kenny Pickett go in the first, Jahan Dotson in the second, you're talking about 2 impact starters. Your projected starting quarterback with Pickett and Dotson, who him and Mike Williams could eat up over the middle of the field. But Dotson also could be a guy who runs in the 4.3s, low 4.4s, take the top off the defense, push the ball down the field. Pickett doesn't have a great arm, but he can get it there. And Dotson might be the guy to be able to force safeties and corners to be able to play back and make Michael Thomas's life that much easier to do what he already does best and, eat up and one between the numbers, but also in that, 8 to 20 yard range, running those slants, those digs, things of that nature. So really like Dotson plus Pickett for a draft for the Saints, and you could be looking at those 2 additions. They keep their stars, no Brady in the division. Might be the best team in the NFC South. Miami Dolphins back on the clock. We'll go Kenneth Walker here. This team definitely could use a running back, and bringing in Mike McDaniels it feels like, we're probably going to see a similar offensive, running philosophy. So because of that, you might say, okay, well, they got a lot out of Elijah Mitchell and, day 3 of the draft. Maybe they'll wait to do then. This team has neglected that position for long enough. Bringing a guy who is all about creating for himself. One of the top runners in college football and creating yards after contact and forced missed tackles. That was Walker's game. He doesn't bring a whole lot as a pass catcher. Maybe they'll bring back Duke Johnson for that type of production, but this team needs a running back for sure. They went Trevor Penning in the first round. This mean run blocking, mean streak, offensive tackle. I think Walker is a nice way to continue to build off of what you're working towards there if you are Miami. Then at pick number 51, back to the Philadelphia Eagles. This could be maybe where you go corner. I decided to go safety here, Jaquan Brisker. He did play more in the box than he did as a deep safety, but of the safeties left, him and Kirby Joseph, more deep safety reps. And I think Brisker has the ability to do a little bit of both. Philadelphia, especially now that Lovie Smith has gotten the job in Houston, I anticipate bringing back Jonathan Gannon. They ran a whole lot of split safety, asking safeties to, one, be able to play in coverage, but also help in the run game. Brisker, obviously, very versatile, can do both those things. So I think it's a really nice fit there, though there will be bit of an adjustment. He's not going to be like a cover 3 robber. Instead, it'd be more, cover 2, cover 4 looks where he is a deep safety in that set. So a little bit of adjustment, but I like the value there for Brisker as well at 51. Back to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm going to go Martin Emerson here. He feels like a Pittsburgh Steelers cornerback of old, right? 6'2", 200 pounds, can win at the line of scrimmage with his press, man coverage ability. I think Mike Tomlin wants to get back to running that. Also just elevated Darrell Austin to the new defensive coordinator position after Keith Butler retired. So we'll see. This could be Emerson. This could be Kyler Gordon. It could be Tariq Woolen, another big body corner. It could also be Darian Kendrick. I'll talk about Kendrick here in a little bit once we get to the 49ers. But cornerback, obviously a big need for Pittsburgh. They've neglected it for long enough. It's about time they put some resources in there. But of course, this could also be offensive line, tackle in specific. Huge need when you talk about the Steelers. Raiders at pick number 53. This is a bit of a project, and especially now that I doubt Tom Cable stays the offensive line coach in Vegas with, Josh McDaniels coming in. But part of the reason they went Alex Leatherwood is because Cable is this, widely respected offensive line coach. And he said, I can work with Leatherwood. I can make him a star. I can get the most out of him. He was the number 1 offensive lineman on Cable's board. That obviously didn't work out. I did think it got a little better once he moved into guard. I don't know if Daniel Falele is still in the second round conversation. Maybe it's round 3 into round 4. But my rationale for this pick is, one, he's huge, and this team needs a right tackle, so Falele could step in as a right tackle. You keep Leatherwood at guard for the entire offseason, allow him to focus on that area and get better. I think you will see some growth in that area if this were to play out. I think Falele, his size put him in a tough spot where he doesn't get low enough. He can get pushed back on his back. That happened a ton at the Senior Bowl, and you don't like a guy who's like, 6'8", 6'9", getting pushed back onto his butt all that often. But also, because he is so big, he does move relatively well. Not great, but well enough. But he'll get beat by speed rushers for sure. So that's my concern about Falele. Maybe he's not in the second round conversation. Maybe this is someone else here. But going tackle makes some sense here for me. If not tackle, corner, IDL could be in play for the Raiders as well. On the New England Patriots, I really like Christian Harris here. They need some linebacker help. This could also be Chad Muma. I don't think he had a great week in Mobile, but I'll go Harris for his ability to, one, be a starting inside linebacker in and of itself, but also as a Donta Hightower replacement as this hybrid, high-caliber blitzing inside linebacker. I think it's a really nice New England Patriots type of pick here, and a great place for Harris to get the most out of his skill set. Back to the Cardinals at pick number 55. We went corner round 1, and I made promise that, hey, we'll come back to the edge. We'll focus on that. And the player I'm going to go with here is Kingsley Enagbare. Problem with Enagbare is he really only has his bull rush move. He has, NFL caliber size, arm, strength, knocks out of the park in all those areas. He just doesn't have a whole lot of moves that he wins with, so it's a bit of a project and something that the Cardinals will have to put resources in and time into, polishing up his skill set and his move repertoire, his arsenal that he can win with. But if he gets 1 or 2 more moves, minimum, with that bull rush, this guy is going to be a starting caliber player in the NFL because he has the size, he has the strength, he just needs a variety of ways he can win, and also high motor. If he can finish plays, he'll rack up some nice box score stats off of that alone too. But then if they get even more out of him, and maybe he really quote unquote hits the books and adds 3, 4, 5 moves and adds a nice balance plus the bull rush, then this guy could get scary, and you're talking about one of the best steals in the second round. So really like this pick here for Arizona. You've added a corner, you've added an edge, focusing on that defense, and where you might have overperformed based off of the names on the paper, next year, if you're at that level, I can feel that it's a true strength as opposed to you guys are playing above or on the higher side of variance. Back to the Dallas Cowboys, this time at pick number 56. I'm going to go safety, and part of it, Anthony Brown is a free agent. This could be Daxton Hill, but for the sake of talking about him, Jalen Petrie had a really nice Senior Bowl. He was one of the players talked about and got the most buzz out of the week. He is this slot corner, and at Mobile, he proved I could hold my own in coverage, both man and zone, so I think just in and of itself, Anthony Brown replacement in the nickel, but also what he could do as, potential Jaron Curse replacement. He's a free agent for Dallas. This guy could help, plug up some of those loose gaps, in the run game, but also what he could do as a blitzer off the edge is kind of interesting. Think about what the Steelers and the Bengals have done with Mike Hilton. I think Petrie could be a similar-ish player, not calling him Mike Hilton, but similar in how you use that role. But I think this guy's a nickel corner, strong safety. Elijah Molden is the immediate comp that came to mind. Makes a lot of sense for Dallas. So I think it's another area of need. Plus him, Davis, focusing on the defense, trying to build up that unit to be able to, hold its own, just like the offense certainly can when it is firing on all cylinders. Next up is the Buffalo Bills. We're going to the secondary in Buffalo. Let's go Kyler Gordon. Comes from a pretty zone-heavy system in Washington. Think he'd fit in well with primarily, the cover 2, cover 4 that McDermott runs. Also, obviously, I think he can hold up his own in man coverage. I don't think he'd be, a liability in that situation. But this is a spot where you went IDL in the first round. Let's add that secondary. Bills have been looking for a number 2 corner upgrade over Levi Wallace, who is a fine player, and I like Wallace. Has a great story, but you can get better in that area. And even if it's not necessarily better, it's just adding more bodies and adding depth. We saw what happens when you leave those corners out there to dry, and against Kansas City, it's not necessarily fair. 1, it's a great offense. 2, you're playing without Tre'Davious White, but they were gassed at the end of that game, and that maybe if you have some more fresh bodies to check in, maybe it makes a difference. But also, I think you just get better in that area. So Kyler Gordon, I like the value there at 57 as well. Then for the Atlanta Falcons, let's go back to the edge department. I think here, let's go with Drake Jackson. Similar to Kingsley Enagbare, you just need to add to his repertoire and his arsenal in which he can win from, but he has NFL caliber size. Makes a lot of sense there. Looks like an NFL starting player. For the Green Bay Packers, I'm going to go John Mechie, the third. Obviously, the injury is scary. You have to worry about what those medicals come back as, but again, this team's focus, at least for the wide receiver position, has been in rounds 2, 3, pretty much. I think Mechie is a really nice complement of Devontae Adams. If they do franchise tag him, bring him back, re-sign him, however they do it, I think this makes a ton of sense. And whether it's Jordan Love or Aaron Rodgers, big arm guys, want to push the ball down the field, and Mechie makes a ton of sense, blazing fast, but also can win in other areas as well. So I think this is really solid value. And really, this is Green Bay benefiting from the fact Mechie did get hurt, because otherwise, I don't really think he's available at 59. For Tampa Bay at pick 60, let's go back to the interior defensive line. Perrion Winfrey made himself a lot of money, especially as a pass rusher. I think he really stood out in Mobile. Granted, the offensive line play wasn't necessarily awesome at the Senior Bowl outside of guys like Zion Johnson, but Winfrey made the most of the opportunities, and I think he makes for a really nice Ndamukong Suh replacement. Probably getting a little bit more as a pass rusher, a little bit of a downgrade as a run stopper, though Suh has kind of lost his elite ability as a run stopper, especially in Detroit. He was an elite, but even when he first got to Tampa last year in the Super Bowl run, he was a plus level run stopper. I don't know if you get now with Winfrey, but you're probably getting a little bit more pass rush, which we saw Tampa kind of have escaped from them as a strong strength as the year went on. For the San Francisco 49ers, I'm going to go Darian Kendrick. Kendrick looked slow in Mobile, and it's one of those things where maybe he's a corner that is in a is at his best when there is a high-end pass rush in front of him. I think that's exactly the situation here in San Francisco. This could also be a Tariq Woolen. Want to give him an honorable mention here. Big, tall corner. Think about the cover 3 seeds in Seattle, and then making its way to San Francisco. They like those big, tall corners. They can get up the line and fit the zone defense. I think Woolen is kind of that archetype. But Kendrick, you've seen it on tape, and he is a really smart, instinctual player. Has some off-the-field concerns, but if your biggest issue is, he's not going to run well, he's not uber fast, only productive when there's a good pass rush in front of him, well, San Francisco put together a really awesome pass rush. Eric Armstead, Nick Bosa, of course. This might be one of the spots where Kendrick finds himself in the best situation for himself. And obviously that would be great for San Francisco, because if he's playing well, they're going to be playing well and probably making a Super Bowl type of push. Kansas City Chiefs at pick number 62. Let's go with, you could go with one of these two wide receivers, Christian Watson out of North Dakota State, or Jalen Tolbert. I'll show Tolbert here in a minute. Both are these contested catch, win at the catch point type of guys. Watson actually measured in, I think, at 6'4", but he's right around his actual listed height from North Dakota State. Jalen Tolbert here listed at 6'3", checked in at about 6'1". But I think a lot of people were really impressed with Jalen Tolbert, and I think he was one of the big winners of the Senior Bowl. Christian Watson also did have a really nice week, so take your pick on which one you like more, Watson or Tolbert. I think that's a really nice addition to the pass-catching core in Kansas City. A guy who can win in different ways than Tyreek Hill, who is a speedster, but also can win up top. I'm not taking that away from Tyreek Hill. But burner, and then Travis Kelce over the middle of the field, obviously wins in contested catch situations. He's also great after the catch. So adding one more weapon in the mix there for Kansas City would certainly help. And then for the Cincinnati Bengals, I'm going right back to the IOL. I think they legitimately could use an upgrade at both guard positions. Sean Ryan has played some tackle, probably guard at the next level. You have him. You have Zion Johnson. I think you have a new starting left and right guard, and that would be awesome if you're Joe Burrow. Final pick we'll go through here. Max Mitchell didn't play great at the Senior Bowl. He might move himself out of the second round entirely, but here I'm making him the last pick of the second round. Maybe it's round 3, maybe it's round 4 for Mitchell. He didn't necessarily look great, but still like some of the measurables and the upside in play there for Max Mitchell. But that brings a close to my updated post-Senior Bowl NFL mock draft. I'll run through it so everybody can see the picks one final time, but hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, hit that like button. It would help me and my channel out a ton. If you're new to the channel, want to see more football, more draft, more off-season content in general, hit that big red subscribe button. And of course, most importantly, share your thoughts down below. Where was I right? Where was I wrong? Who do I have going too high? Who do I have going too low? Who's your favorite team? Tell me what you think about this draft class for them. Love to have every thought you have about this video down in the comments section. Let's talk some football down below. That's going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej, and I'm signing off.